Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the Prop S Oversight Committee. My name is Matt Davis, and I'm president of the Board of Education. And first, let me thank you all very much for volunteering to serve on this very important committee. When we passed Prop S with a amazing 87% of the vote to issue bonds in the amount of $160 million to use on capital improvements in our school district. One of the things that the Board of Education very much wanted to ensure was that we had transparency in the process of how we spent the money, identified the projects, and saw those projects to completion. So this is sort of the first meeting of the committee to begin that process. So tonight we will go over just sort of the nuts and bolts of what we're looking at and how this is going to work. I want to go through and just sort of introduce everybody who's on the call and make sure that I got everybody. And then I will turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Saunier, who will explain a little bit about the process. And then we will go over to our coach, who I'll introduce in a second. First of all, I'm just going to go down the list. Wanda Scott. Ms. Scott, you are a parent at Ashland.
Yes, I'm the grandparent of the SLPS, and I'm also an alumni of the SLPS.
And so thank you so much. And your grandchild goes to Ashland, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, I appreciate so much you being here. We wanted to make sure that we definitely had parents, grandparents, caretakers to see what's going on in the building and how we're going to invest this money and get your input as well as to make sure that we communicate with representatives. So I so much appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you.
We have Ms. Angie Banks, who is the CFO of the district. Cheryl Vanoy, who is running this meeting, is a deputy superintendent for IT and accountability, something like that. Gloria Nolan, who is the district's parent coordinator. I think that's your title, Gloria. She's also a regular member of the budget committee. Alicia will explain that in a second. Jason Johnson, who also an SLPS parent of three, right? Yeah. And also has I don't know what title is, Jason, but you have Tower Real Estate Group. You're also a developer in the city and an architect as well. Ms. Lori Willis, who's the Deputy Superintendent of the Office of Institutional Advancement. She's going to help us create the materials, the website, the data dashboard, which we'll talk a little bit about. Ms. North is at Sumner High School. I'm not sure what you teach at Sumner, but I think you've also been involved as an athletic director in a couple different schools and under a while. Is that right, Mr. Northway?
Yes, I've taught the last 28 years in SLPS, and I've taught social studies my whole career.
Excellent. And also you're serving here as one of the representatives nominated by AFT 420. So glad to have you here as well, because you know this probably as better as anybody. So we appreciate that. We have Nicole Williams, who is currently the chief of staff and a couple with the interim superintendent of the school district after Dr. Adams' retirement starting January 1st. So hello, Dr. Williams. Alderwoman Boyd, who Alderwoman, I know your old ward number, but I don't know what the new ward number is. But I know that in your district you have Walbridge, Nance, and Herzog schools. Any others?
No, that's correct. Walbridge, Nance, and Herzog, and the new ward will be the 13th ward.
And are you still the chair of the Ways and Means Committee?
Yes. Yes, sir. And the chair of the African American Caucus.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you
very much. Rachel Stewart, also an SLPS parent. She is, I think your title is something like Chief Communications Officer at MyTech or Vice President at MyTech. So formerly, I believe you were had Miss Willis's job at one point, and you are also on the board of the SLPS Foundation, and you were as the nominee from the Regional Business Council, who was so supportive of Prop S. Did I get that all right, Ms. Seward?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. President Ray Cummings, president of T20. So, Mr. Cummings, you're also a member of the regular budget committee. Alderwoman Shameen Clark Hubbard, current alderwoman of the 6th. Again, I don't know your new number, alderwoman, also an SLPS parent. Schools in your ward are, if I get it right, 10. Soldan, is that in your ward? Are you there, Shamim? I think I've got slow internet. Next, we have Square Watson, who is in charge, Deputy Superintendent for Facilities, Operations. But he's also over facilities. He is going to be the co-chair of the committee. He is, and he will be leading most of the presentation. We have Susan Turk, SLPS parent, I guess SLPS parent alumni, longtime friend of the district, journalist, watchdog, historical chronicler, also a member of the budget committee. We have Ms. Victoria Glaspie, budget director for SLPS, also the co-chair of this committee. I think everybody who's on here, there's a couple of people who weren't able to attend tonight. Representative Lakeisha Bosley, State Representative Lakeisha Bosley, who's been a great friend of the district, particularly when it comes to getting us financing our fences. We'll talk about a little bit as well. Also, Dr. Casey Seal Shahid, who's the principal at CVPA, is also a regular of the budget committee. So that's everybody who is on this committee. So I just wanted everyone to know who everybody was. And now I want to turn it over to Ms. Sonia, who's going to talk a little bit about what we want this committee to do. And then after that, we will turn it over to Mr. Watson and Ms. Glaspie to sort of give the introductory overview of the bond issue and the facilities projects and how that process will work. So Alicia, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. Like Matt said, we're so thankful that you all are here tonight with us. I am chair of the budget committee, and I saw so many of you all during Proposition S's campaign, and we are so thankful for all of the support. The purpose of this committee is kind of a subset of the budget committee, is to make sure, sort of like what Matt said earlier, that we are honoring our word and we're being transparent. $160 million is a lot of money, and the projects that they will be doing are very big, major projects that won't be done overnight, but we want to make sure that, you know, the public and you all who are so supportive of us doing this process and will continue to be supportive know what's happening, going on. So just as the process is moving forward, as projects are being done, things are being completed, all of those updates will be coming back to this committee, and this committee will meet on a bi-monthly or so basis to make sure that we're providing those updates to the public, taking any questions, and making sure that that transparency is there. I just want to reiterate that this Proposition S is for buildings that have children in it, for buildings that have schools in it. We do know that there are some other needs with SLPS buildings, but for this money, we're going to prioritize making sure that our children and our scholars, that they are learning in environments that are worthy of them and deserving of them. So we're going to focus the money on that, on that specific focus. I'm going to pass this off now to Mr. Watson, who is the Deputy Superintendent of Operations for the district, and who will be leading a lot of the work and a lot of the projects. And it's just kind of going to give you all sort of a very, like a good overview of the path forward, how we're thinking about approaching this, some of the priorities and things that will be getting done. Mr. Watson.
Hey, thank you, Ms. Sonia. Hey, thank you, Mr. Davis, for the introduction, and thanks to all for coming to this meeting this evening. So as the presentation is being loaded, just kind of want to first and foremost thank all within the district. I mean, from all of those that are on this call or on this meeting, their parts and their different roles and perspectives, as well as those from the operations team, and for those that aren't here but their voice is still being heard. Tonight's presentation, again, as Ms. Sanye kind of introduced what this is going to be about, is really more informational initially. So the purpose is to provide some information in regards to our strategies and our plans for the bond issue that was passed in August. So I'll begin with an overview. For the bond issue, the idea is that we want to convert our classroom spaces to improve the academic environment for our 21st century learners. The basis for the basis for the bond issue is driven by what we call our Facility Capital Action Plan, FCAP for short. And what that particular document provides is it gives us some cost estimates for facility upgrades. In other words, we know the conditions of our buildings. And this is a way that we keep this information within the facilities department, where every year we visit this document and we update it based on the needs of the schools. And that's from the people, actually from the people, as I feel, or as I generally would say, those closest to the problem generally know the solution. So that's our maintenance, our custodial team, the principals, our school leaders, our school staff, everyone within the district has provided some input when it comes to our FCAP. We take this document and again, we update this annually. The purpose again for the bond issue, of course, is to align and support the district initiative, the transformation plan, just to make sure that we create a safe and secure environment for teachers to teach and students to learn, a real adequate condition to support technology from the technology department, most importantly, accountability of our public finances, and of course, equity. And again, for the purpose of the last purpose is to inform, particularly this committee, of just some of the different approaches and strategies that we plan on using for this bond issue. The next slide shows our approach. So this is a three-step or three-process approach. The first is assessing. That's assessing all of our buildings and their replacement value. The next step is planning. That's coming up with a plan based on prioritizing particular capital needs, and then a space utilization report, which I'll discuss in the next few slides. The last is creating some type of real-time updates to show the improvements that we've done to all of our facilities and strategically address schools that are not fully utilizing their facilities. So in other words, as it was just kind of discussed earlier, one of the things that we did under the previous bond issue, which I was actually a part of, is that we had signage. Another thing that we're doing this year, in addition to the signage at all of our facilities, is we'll be working with the communications department with Ms. Lori Willis to create some type of dashboard. That way that at any given moment in time, families, students, stakeholders will be able to see some of the progress of some of the projects that we're going to do for each of our facilities. So this next slide somewhat talks about the first step, which is assessment. What you see here is a scattergram chart, and the different dots represent each of our facilities. They're broken into 5 tiers. Tier 1, which are indicate our 14 schools, and this information is based on our deferred maintenance costs or information from our FCAP, which I referred to or I referenced earlier. So 14 of our schools have at least $500,000 or left of improvements. Then you go to our tier 2 schools, which are 20 schools, and you see that range of $500,000 to $1 million of improvements. Tier 3 ranges from $1 million to $2 million. There are 16 schools in that particular tier. Tier 4 is $2 million to $3 million range, and you see that there are 9 schools in that range. And the last tier, tier 5, in which there are over $3 million of facility needs, and there are 7 schools in this particular space. Now, one of the key indicators when it comes to assessing our facility is that we look at a lot of different variables, such as the age of the building, some of the major capital projects and renovations that are needed. We also look at some of the systems in the building, such as our heating and cooling, and we look at the replacement and the life cycle of those equipment. In particular to those tier 4 and tier 5 schools and some of those tier 3 schools, which are indicated in the yellow, the light purple, and the red. Those generally kind of indicate that we may either have outdated or antiquated systems. That may be mechanical system, plumbing systems, even our electrical systems. They may also have some exterior or interior finishes that may be unrepairable, and that entails things such as peeling paint, some tuck pointing, and some roofing issues. The next slide is the second part of this phase, which is what we call our planning phase. And what you see is how we prioritize, in particular to the bond issue, how we prioritize our capital projects. So those first three priorities, 1, 2, and 3, which are highlighted in the light green, generally indicate those particular capital projects that address what we call the envelope, or in some cases, our life safety issues. They include things such as our foundation, tuck pointing of our exterior walls, window replacements, and some of those items are kind of listed to the right, the third column to the right. The third bullet, pretty much what we call our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and heating and cooling systems. Again, this is part of our infrastructure in our buildings. So our approach is to address those high dollar capital projects and those items and those bullets listed below. The items below number 3, 4 through 10 are still priority, but first and foremost, we have to address the envelope, the shell of our buildings, to be able to do some of the interior finishes, and also be in accordance or be in compliance with codes. So oftentimes, particularly under our last bond issue, we did a lot of elevator upgrades. And at that point in time, the city, when it came to permitting, they really pushed and made sure that we made accommodations, or we were in compliance to our ADA, the ADA compliance piece. So the approach this particular, as we go through this bond issue, is to make sure that all of our stakeholders are engaged, that we are also in communication with the city to kind of let them know some of our plans in regards to some of the upgrades and improvements to our buildings. And of course, as you see the list on down to 10, where we also kind of address some of our sidewalks, our concrete steps and landings, our fences, which Mr. Davis kind of talked about, and you'll see on some upcoming slides, and down to 10, where we're looking at playground equipment, signage, and improving our landscape, and sometimes athletic fields. Another part of this piece, before I get into the construction delivery method, is, and I made mention of this in the previous slide, is our space utilization. And what that information generally entails is when we go to, or we provide to our school leaders and to schools in general, it's a document that pretty much kind of asks the question of how they use or utilize their buildings or spaces within their buildings. They designate classroom, offices, or special multi-purpose rooms that they use within the facility. And again, all this information is collected for us to kind of come up with a strategic approach to not only support the instruction in the schools, but also meet some of the capital needs.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, Van Noy. So these next few slides, and this is really for informational purposes. And what I'm going to really just kind of go briefly over are some of the construction delivery methods. So the first particular method is what we call design, bid, build. And what you see is more just like a picture or a diagram to kind of show you what that particular approach looked like. This is, for lack of better words, the traditional approach, where the district hires an architect or engineer design team. The architect is the main advocate for the district for any type of change orders or any quality control. The design team designs the buildings based on some of the specification and some of the input that the district provides. And then the design team will develop bid documents, and they'll help the district solicit bids from the GC or the general contractor. At that point, the general contractor will make recommendations to the subs or the contractors that they want to work with based on the bids for the whole project. The district at that point in time will make recommendations to the board for approval of those particular subs or contractors before work actually begins. And that's the design, bid, build process, or or methodology. The next approach is what we call the construction manager agency, or the CMA. This particular approach was more or less up until 2016 was more or less the method by state statute, Missouri state statute for public projects. The district hires the architectural/engineering firm, and the district also hires the construction management agency firm early on in the process to work with the design team just to come up with some of the designs based on the scopes of work or based on the district needs. The district acts as the general contractor. In other words, they will follow and also make recommendations for the contractors and subcontractors that could be used on some of the projects. The bid packages are then developed by both the design team and the construction management team. And at that point in time, we'll make recommendations to the board to more or less contract with contractors of sub for each of the bid packages. The last approach is what we call the construction manager at risk, CMAR. This approach became allowable per state statute after August of 2016. In this approach, the district hires an architectural or engineering design team, and then the district also hires a construction management at-risk team early in the process, again, to work with the design team on the scope of work and some of the district needs that are usually identified within our facility capital action plan. The construction manager acts as the general, and then they develop some of the bid packages for the design team or from the design team to be placed out for bid. And at that point in time, the construction management firm makes recommendations for the contractors or the subs that they want to use for each of the bid packages. And then that's when the construction actually begins. So this next slide, because that was a lot of information in regards to the different delivery methods, this next slide kind of gives a summary of each of those methods, where you see the first column talks about the description of the task, and you see some of the items that are listed below. Then you'll see the design build process or method and approach, the CMA, the construction manager agency approach, and the at-risk approach. And you'll see both the advantages and some of the benefits and some of the disadvantages of using both of those approaches. At this point in time, until we get bids, or proposals, so at this point in time, we actually have an RFQ, request for qualifications, for both architectural and engineering services, as well as for construction management services. Once we get those proposals in, which are actually due to the district on December the 13th, is when we'll make our recommendations in regards to the construction delivery method that the district will move forward with. So the next slide is some of the information that I just kind of discussed earlier in regards to our facility capital action plan with some projected or estimated costs. And you will see that some of the items that are listed, and they are basically listed based on the timelines of when we anticipate the projects to start. So for example, those that are in the yellow, the anticipated timeline is that these projects will likely start in the summer of 2023. Now, there are some other indicators which are not listed in here that could somewhat delay or cause some impact to those timelines, and most of them are supply chain issues. But as you will see that the asterisk, for example, for those outdoor learning spaces or for those fire alarm system upgrades, the asterisk simply means that we will be using both ESSER and bond issue monies for these particular projects. The third one that you see, the chain link fence replacement, is something that that Mr. Davis, when he opened up, talked about. And the district was awarded an ARPA award, ARPA, in which some monies were allocated to the district in the form of a grant so that we could ultimately replace those chain link fence, which does have some hazardous or some lead within the fence. And the idea is the idea is that we are going to remove those fences and replace them with something more aesthetically pleasing for our scholars to play in the playground, or just to protect our our schools and our assets district-wide. The other items, again, are listed. Those in that pinkish color indicate those projects that'll be done next summer. So I just want to make note also that you see a lot of summer anticipated projects, and that's simply because some of these projects we can't necessarily do when students and staff are in the building. So the objective and plan is for us to really kind of be strategic in our approach and make sure that we do a lot of these projects from the day that school ends, and then we'll have the summer months up until staff and students return in August to really make a big impact in a short amount of time, but that definitely comes with planning and preparation. Again, some of the other items that you see that are highlighted include some of the ADA upgrades, some asphalt and flat work. Again, that's to address some of the concerns when it comes to our concrete work, our steps, and really just trying to rebuild, as the title say, rebuild, rebrand, and hopefully reinforce why families, students, and partners should belong to SLPS. And the next slide, this is the third phase, more or less, for the projects that we're looking to conduct. These are some of our, when I made mention of our lead time, these are some of our our long lead time items, such as window replacement and exterior doors, and a lot of our heating and cooling, such as chiller and boiler replacements. Just to kind of give you an idea of some of the lead times for some of these items. For example, we did a window replacement at a few of our facilities this year at Central BPA, and we're looking to do some window replacement at Nottingham. It has taken almost 9 to 10 months to get windows literally here in St. Louis, just because of the supply chain issues that we have. So the reason that you see an anticipated timeline, some of this work beginning in the summer of 2024, and it's going to expand through the summer of 2026, is to really kind of accommodate some of those lead time items. But the plan is that once we get our scope of work, and again, a lot of this is the scope of work that the architectural firm and the construction management firm that will be working with the district have already been identified through our FCAP. And quite frankly, because we've done a lot of this work in the past, we're really kind of familiar with some of the scopes of work so that we can really kind of put those packages out for contractors to bid, so that they can go ahead and make the purchases, or at least kind of secure through our procurement process, go ahead and begin ordering some of those items, equipment with those long lead times, so that hopefully within a year, summer 2024, those items will be here in St. Louis. And then again, we can kind of do some of the upgrades. And again, some of the major upgrades include to our restroom. As we listen to our students and staff throughout the district, that was one of the things that they really focused on as we kind of did a survey, and just kind of listen again to our stakeholders and what can we do to, again, rebuild, rebrand, and reinforce why students and staff should not only stay in the district, but how to make the district more attractive. This next slide, generally, it's going to talk about our program methodology. So this is just really going to recap and give an overview of what I just kind of more or less just kind of went over rather quickly. But again, with this committee, and the purpose for this is just to give you the information. So some of the procedures and the methodology that we'll be following is to follow and identify some of those key academic initiatives to support academic learning. Again, it's gathering and evaluating existing data, which is generally found in our FCAP, but that also includes that building utilization form or report that we'll receive from our schools to kind of understand how schools are utilizing their spaces. Get input, again, not only from this committee, but other stakeholders, to see what it is that we can do within the district to really kind of make the district more attractive and for students and families to want to come to SLPS. Made mention of aligning this with our utilization plan, and then in terms of the approach of developing the scope of work and provided that estimated cost, again, that information will come as we make our recommendations and bring forth the architectural and engineering firms, as well as the construction management firm, and the different delivery approaches, which will be which will come once we get the proposals in. And once we identify our delivery methods, one of the things that when we have our discussion is making sure that we address any equity concerns in the district. So in other words, if we're going to install window shades, we're going to install window shades across the district. Somewhat kind of standardize some of our projects, water bottle filler stations. There are quite a few things, the fence replacements, and quite a few projects that we're going to do just to kind of be standard across the board so that all schools will be able to benefit from the bond money and even ESSA monies that were allotted to the district. And then we're going to hopefully evaluate future challenges and possibilities. So in other words, get our buildings and our schools and our classrooms ready for our 21st century learners.
Okay.
The next slide just really talks about what the next steps are. The first bullet indicates our quick hitter projects. Those quick hitter projects are like lighting upgrades. They may, and again, the fence replacement, floor repairs, painting. Those are some of the things that show progress, that the district is working towards making these improvements. Then we're in the process, again, as I made mention, of selecting an architectural and engineering firm, and then making our recommendation in regards to the type of construction delivery method that we want to use. After we select those firms, the two firms, and we conduct a real detailed evaluation based on some of the needs in the district and prioritize those needs, we'll be able to really finalize our scope of work for each of our projects or our bid packages and prepare those for bid. And again, this will be following under the guidance by Ms. Banks and Ms. Glaspie and the finance and the procurement team, also by Ms. Stephanie Pyatt, to come up with a plan so that we will be able to not only provide the structure for contractors and subcontractors to participate in this bond issue, but one of the key things that I did mention earlier was to be inclusive, which means that our minority firms and our women business-owned firms to also be a part of this endeavor. And while I'm speaking about that, one of the things that we did and we prided ourselves under the last bond issue was our goal is always 25% MBE or minority participation, 5% WBE. Under the last bond issue, we did a very good job of really having a high percentage of MBE to the point where I think we were almost 40% MBE and almost 10% of WBE firms that were able to participate and be inclusive with this bond issue. Then after we get our procurement strategy, comes the timeline, which you see next. The timeline more or less kind of gives an idea of when we plan on bringing on the architectural firm, which you see is in February 2023. Ms. Sanye also suggested and mentioned that we will also have this meeting, this oversight meeting, possibly bi-monthly. So we're looking somewhere around early March, where we'll reconvene and just kind of give you updates on where we are with the selection of our architectural engineering firm and the approach that we're going to take with our construction management delivery methods. And then later on in March, once we bring aboard those two firms, we'll really kind of define and develop the scope of work. And then we'll be able to have those design projects and phases and packages out for bid. At that point in time, or after that particular piece, somewhere around May, this oversight committee will meet again. And then at that point, we'll kind of again provide some updates and where we are with our design packaging, some of our scopes of work, and some of the things that we're looking to do for this summer. Once those things have been sought out and been discussed, then the projects will begin and commence hopefully in July. And one of the other items that I may mention or I just noted in here is in July, I would like for this particular committee, if available and if time permits, and or if projects are underway, that we may conduct some site visits to some schools so you actually can see the progress that'll be conducted during that time. But again, this is a very tentative timeline. But as we meet later on in March, we'll definitely be able to really be more concise with our timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we'll make our recommendations to the board moving forward, and then we'll send our notices out to proceed for our contractors to begin work. So this was, again, a very brief overview, more informational in terms of our purpose, our planning. But again, the objective and the goal is for us to this is our opportunity to not only get others involved in this process, but I think most importantly, and I'll keep stressing this is our opportunity to rebuild, rebrand, and reinforce why families, students, community stakeholders should belong to SLPS. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, I will open it up for any questions that you may have.
I
think Ms. Boyd, you muted.
I'd be so glad when we be in person. I'm so sick of this Zoom stuff. I don't know what to do. I wanted to ask the question, if I know that you all are trying to be transparent and have a community, but are the teachers knowing, are the principals knowing when their schools will be targeted, what will be done, or what the plan is for their sites?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Boyd, good question. So as we kind of fine tune this process, all schools, teachers, principals, transparency is definitely be our motto, that they will be full aware of what projects and some of the things that will be taking place in their building. And the idea, and this is something, Ms. Willis, if you want to kind of chime in, is that we're going to create a dashboard, not only for the district, but in hopes that we also do for each of our schools, so that we will be able to see in real time, more or less a checklist of those things that we said that we're going to deliver to ensure. And again, that's that accountability piece, that we're going to deliver on those items and projects that we said we're going to do. So this will definitely be something that not only will they know, but they will also have a voice in some of the projects that will take place within their building.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I had a question. I thank you for the presentation, first of all. I think it gives a great overview of things to come, and it's pretty exciting. And I think that for me, where I'm kind of struggling with the tension is around the notion. It feels like there's things that are absolutely going to be happening in multiple spaces across. But I think I think my personal hope was that there would be a beautiful gut rehab of one of our spaces, or of some of our spaces, something that is, just like creating a new space and an exciting place to be for the students. And I wonder if any plans like that would be included in this work, because there's new windows and a boiler and that, but the welcoming and brand new space for students to walk into and be excited about their learning and their environment. That's what I'm really concerned with.
Understood and noted, Ms. Nolan. Definitely something that once we get everyone engaged, I'll definitely make sure that I pass that information along. I think some of the challenges with that approach, Ms. Nolan, is the time and possibly having to relocate students to another location because of how long it would take to actually do that type of renovation. For example, I see Dr. Shahid on the call and has joined us. One of the things that we're doing in light of the tragic that happened on October the 24th is renovating Central Vision Performing Arts. And the challenge is and has been that, students and staff are really accustomed to being in their spaces. However, with that intensive type of renovation, sometimes it would likely mean that we would again have to relocate students to another location, which impacts transportation, food services, a lot of other variables, but definitely noted and something that we will consider. But I will say that sometimes, some of the things that I talked about, those quick wins, painting, lighting, they do go a long way. They do really, really kind of impact a lot of the staff and students when they come in, because last year the board approved like $1 million of painting. And when the students came back in August, some of them thought they were in a new building, just because of something small such as painting went a long way just to really kind of brighten up those spaces. New lighting really kind of emphasize the classroom learning. But your point is well noted and taken, and something I will bring to not only this committee, but to the team, the architectural and engineering team, once they come on board.
Hello. Looking forward to seeing what you all come up with.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. My question, I think, is similar to Gloria's, and I had to join a little bit late due to my class schedule, so I apologize if I missed this at the beginning. I am curious if there has been, or how recently there has been an analysis of the district's infrastructure and buildings, thinking about the students that we have, where they live, where our schools are. Are we able to do an analysis of the entire district, kind of thinking about Gloria's question of, are the facilities that we have meeting the needs of the students and our presence in the city? Do we have anything like that?
Thank you, Ms. Rowe-Collins, for that question. So that'll be some of the requests when we bring actually the architectural and engineering, this construction management firm, that they're going to give us some type of assessment or analysis of not only the condition of our buildings, which we have internally. We do have some of that information, but some of the other logistical items, such as how schools plan on utilizing their facilities, their buildings, all of that information will be wrapped into our scope of work or the projects that we're going to put out for the public and for everyone to know what we're doing in the building. So that'll be part of the process. I know that there'll be some other variables, and I'll kind of lean into Ms. Van Noy's team and also from the Safety and Security Department, that all of this information collectively will be part of our approach to this particular bond issue. So definitely noted, Ms. Collins, and I'll make sure that in our upcoming meetings that I'll provide that type of analysis to this committee.
Mr. Watson? Will there be opportunities for the families of the schools? So as part of this report, input from those families in terms of what they might want or need or desire, families and or students, because it seems as if that I'm not hearing that, and even school leaders. So at what point, so if the architectural firm comes in and they have this wonderful idea or do this report and analysis, at what point do the voices of the stakeholders who are in the building or connected to the building have with that report?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Shaheed. So one of the things that we'll do is push out a survey to kind of ask that question. What is it that you feel that the district could do to repurpose or rebrand or rebuild within all of our cities, schools? That'll definitely come in the form of a survey. However, I think for the purpose of at least this first phase is we have to tighten up our infrastructure. So a lot of those things that you just made mention, a lot of our systems, our heating and cooling systems, our roofing, exterior doors, windows, they're literally outdated. So a lot of these initial costs, initial projects will address those deficiencies within our buildings. Then we can come back and do some of the aesthetics and some of the other items based on some of the information that we get back from the survey. And based on when we get the costs and the estimated costs from the bid packages that go out. But our first initial approach is to really kind of tighten up our envelope within all of our schools just so that we are able to come in and do some of the aesthetics and some of the cosmetic things that need to be done within our schools to really kind of beautify them and give them the look that I know that the students and staff will feel most comfortable in.
If I could jump in too, just to kind of sort of just in a very broad way, I'm sorry, I don't have my camera on because I'm in the car and I pull on the side of the road. But just sort of a broad way to kind of address all three of those questions. There's a number of initiatives that the district is going on, Prop S being one of them. Prop S, if we could have raised $1 billion, we could have spent it all on doing all these wonderful things. We were sort of limited on the no tax bond increase at the $160 million. The challenge always being that FCAP that Square was talking about is around 300 million. So we knew that 160 million wasn't even going to touch all of the deferred maintenance and needs that we had to do. So there's a lot of other questions that we're sort of working on. One is part of the citywide plan in terms of, what does the school system look like? There's other issues that we have around transportation and the way that the transportation works. And sorry, I lost for a second. So there's a lot of bigger pictures, but I do want to just sort of reemphasize that the Prop S bond is not going to touch everything that we need to do. And in terms of input, I keep always going back to when we did the community visioning workshops, and we did a lot of focus groups with community members, families, students, and teachers and building staff. And the ones that always touched me the most were the ones from the students and the way that they viewed their buildings. And I was on a rampage when we were promoting Prop S to talk about bathrooms, because everybody who's in the building, every kids in the building, I'm sure have had your kids complain about the bathrooms in the schools. And a lot of them, they're really just in terrible shape. So there's not going to be a lot of, I think to Square's point, some of the stuff, and we took tours of a lot of buildings when we were going, they were, 1920s bathrooms and had barely been touched since then. We're going to focus on stuff like that, that is going to make a very measurable difference. And that is all sort of based on what we've been hearing over and over again from people in the building. So I don't want to sort of like crush everybody's hopes and dreams, but I also want to reset the realistic idea behind what Prop S was always going to be able to do. And that is really, I hate to say put a dent in it, but we could use $1 billion easily. And we don't have access to that. So what we're hoping that this committee does is to sort of help us focus those limited dollars on the things that are going to be most impactful, if that all makes sense.
Okay.
I have a question. Since we're talking about the limitations of the money made available by Prop S, every so often, every 5 or 6 or 10 years, I don't have a good enough memory, we get to a point where a previous bond issue is retired, and that's when we let out a new one, ask the voters to approve a new one. So it would help, I think, if we knew when the next bond issue is going to retire and when we will then again be able to ask the voters to approve an additional bond issue and how much that will be for, so that people have an idea or sort of of some hope of what we can continuously do in terms of maintenance and improvements of our buildings over time and over the long term.
Okay.
Ms. Banks, do you want to take that question?
Yes, I think that's a great point that you make. I know that a lot of school districts have kind of like rolling bond issues every 4 or 5 years. So that is certainly some information I can work on with the support of our bond counsel. So I will work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just have a wild question since we're talking about money. I guess to Susan's, I guess a two-part comment. To Susan's point, there was, the last bond issue was in like 2012?
Yeah, it was 10 years ago, and it was about 150.
So based on her comment, they could potentially be a lot closer, right?
So we did this as a no tax increase bond issue, and correct me if I get this wrong, Ms. Banks, but because of the time, and to Susan's point, those bonds had essentially used the word retired. We'll go with that. We were able to go to the voters for approval of bonds and not have to change the debt service rate that we charge. So school finance is complicated. There's 3 pots. We have to work on debt service. So the question, I think, for Ms. Banks is, if it's going to take 10 years till we can go back to the voters for a no tax bond increase, or do we consider a tax increase sometimes in 4 or 5 years for an additional bond issue? So that's always the tricky part. Obviously, no tax bond increases are easier because people's taxes are the rate is going to stay the same. But it's going to be a different issue if we then have to go and incur more debt. And, there's an ideal amount of debt, there's limitations.
He always gets to the good part and then pop out.
The thing is, we've always done no tax increase bond issues, and that's why it's been easy to pass them. And, over the 30 years that I've been involved, I think I've seen about 4 of them. And the emphasis has always been that this will not increase your taxes. And we have always been successful in getting them passed. So yes, that is easy, but, Matt is right. We might want to be ambitious and try to see if we can pass one that would raise taxes, if the need is there and we can make the sale to the community that the need is there and we need their support.
The need is, I think it's evident, right? That's the way I'm seeing it. And it's so, our students and our community, they're so worth it. So that was the piece that I was trying to lean into. And then the other piece is, where else could we get more money? We're talking about Rams money flowing in, other money flowing into the city. How can we leverage those various pots to get us to where we need to be? Matt said we could have used $1 billion with a B. How do we get there? And what are some other creative ways of thinking to make sure that we're able to walk out a strategy that is really going to have a great impact?
Well, that's a different committee, Gloria. And we'll see you on January 31st in Jefferson City, and we can go around with the hats and see what they can get us. That's how we got the $800,000 for the fences. And so, kind of having, and they're going to have extra money again this year. And so I've pushed Dr. Adams to come up with some projects that aren't going to be covered in this, that we think will be politically enticing to our state legislators. Now they're not going to give us $1 billion, but we can do better than 800,000. And so those could be one-off projects. The fences, it's such a huge thing. I think before I was on the board, I was trying to get those fences replaced. And I'm so thrilled that we were able to get it. We were able to get the money, and we're going to be able to get a match. So, and you're going to drive around the city and look at our schools.
Can we use any of this money to help? No, I'm just kidding.
right, this is a sign that this meeting has been an hour, so we probably got to wrap it up. But
Well, another source of money is if we can get the city to not give away all of the SLPS's portion of TIFs and tax abatements to developers. And this is something that's done around the country in other cities where they might give 50% or they might give none of the school district's apportionment of the increased tax revenue from developed properties to developers for their purposes. We really need to put pressure on the mayor and the development committee in the city to stop doing that to us. We need that money.
and that is a different committee. That is the Legislative and Governance Committee, and our next meeting is on January 20th. And those are three of our priorities. And we're also working to hire a liaison with the city to work more closely with them on those issues, because we have made some headway, particularly with SLDC. But Ms. Cousins and I can't do it alone on our volunteer basis. So, but yes, all great points. But I do just kind of want to redirect back to the presentation and the next steps and see if there's any questions about that. Otherwise, we'll touch back in March where we should have more substantive things to go over, if that's all good.
Yep.
All right. Well, hearing no other questions, and always feel free to email myself.
Matt,
Oh yeah, go for
Matt,
it.
this is Ray.
Mr.
I got
Cummings,
one question. My question has to do with prevailing wage on these projects.
I believe that is in all of our RFPs, but I'll ask confirm that with Mr. Watson.
Oh, yes, we will, by state statute, have to pay prevailing wages for our project. And that is in our RFPs.
Thank you, sir.
And I dropped information in the chat. If you'd like to get more information on Prop S, you can access it at slps.org/Prop S and click on the plus sign for a whole outline of all the projects and where we're going from here.
We can do that.
All righty.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I certainly appreciate your time. If you think of anything else or have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Ms. Saunier, Mr. Watson, Ms. Glaspie. We will be happy to address any questions or concerns or any other thoughts that you have that you didn't think of tonight or after reviewing this. We can send out this presentation as well, so you can have more time to review it and go over the details. And I thank Square because he had like originally 20 more slides, so he cut it down a little bit. So I appreciate that. But thank you all very much. This has been great. I hope it's been helpful to you. And again, we'll meet back again in March and talk then.